All right, guys. So I might be whispering again. um, Before I do all my reviews and all my DRC, and I figured it would be easier to just do a quick video first. Um, um, I know we all have. Today was an intense day, and we all have different things that we need. Each one of us have a different thing, sort of, that was exposed by a day like today, and that we need to address. Um, Personally, for me, is sure we did make a few mistakes, but in the end, what killed me was my inability to control my emotions and to and how I went on tilt. And I was pretty good in the early morning because I did all the things that I said I was going to do. You know, whatever. Did my morning routine, went to the gym, ate, meditated, all that shit. And I was fine. I was feeling fine, and I was feeling pretty alert. And I was feeling pretty in tune here with the tape, even though it was not an easy tape at the open, and I traded this pretty well. I also, and I articulated this over the call. I realized when it was time to stop trading, because we knew the sketchy action that was going. I stressed the importance of waiting for it to set up again. Um, and then maybe it was even boredom. I was like, because I was already okay. It was not a big P&L or anything, but I was already, green day after two blowups this week. So, um, and then I just tried to put on a couple of trades, and they didn't work, and I gave it all back, and knowing that I shouldn't have been trying to trade here, and I was on tilt, and it was down here where I was like, I thought this thing was, we were in the 150s, which I did a quick glance at a higher time frame, and I realized that it was an important level. We'll get into that because that's not enough, and that was one of the reasons why we botched this whole day, not knowing the levels correctly. But anyways, um, thinking that it was going to bounce, and here I was just on tilt, really on tilt, because I lost all my profits, and I was like crazy. And you can hear it on the audio. I had a crazy behavior here, like this shit needs to bounce because it needs to bounce, and it wasn't going to bounce. But the point is here that I was so tilted. I was actually up. I mean, I lost all my profits, but I was up here like, I don't know, $80 or something like that. In the end, I was up like $150. Here, I was not even in red, and then in the end, it clearly showed it hand. Bam! It failed. Clearly, it was not going to bounce when it takes out. Right? Bam! Flushes. And at that minute, I just saw it on the video, and we'll see it later when I replay the tape. I just said, "Fuck this shit." This is typically what I always say. It's like, "Fuck this shit." I blew up, and I just gave up. And the second that I said that, I was only down $250. Literally, I could have just pressed a button and cut my losses, flip short immediately. I was so blinded by being on tilt that I didn't even realize that this was so simple to do, because at that point it was so clearly momentum, right? And if I had done that, this would have been I would have made, it would have been a home run, this trade. I would have made my daily target between this spot and this spot already. But, you know, but even I could have captured the whole thing and made like fucking 5 times that. So, and this is real momentum, and this is really easy to trade, as we could see later on the tape. So, It was just that inability to control my temper that killed me here. Even when I gave back, yeah, the mistakes that I made, giving back the P&L and all that, that shouldn't have happened. But it was that was pennies compared to just here. I would have made it back immediately, and then I would have just hit my target. So that was my issue today. We're gonna have to address Luca's issues. We're gonna have to address Lot's issues. Everybody had issues today. Okay. Um, I have a big issue. I need to, now I'm back at square one. I was halfway through passing the eval. I'm back at square one. My account is now at minus 200. So back at square one. So, anyways, this should not have happened, but that was my issue. But aside from that, as a team, there are a lot of things that went wrong today, and this is what we're going to have to address this during the meeting on the weekend. But I just want to start the conversation, and um, I guess there are a few things. So, first thing is we were not, or at least I wasn't, and it didn't happen during prep. We were not very clear on all the levels that could have been important here and considered all the scenarios. Luca was the only person that put it out there, but he didn't even, he put it out there like as he was embarrassed about saying it and nobody paid attention to him. And this needs to change. And this is a thing that has to, we need to be fucking, own the things that we say. And we need to be confident, man. We need to be confident. We're traders. We know. And if we're wrong, we're wrong. And time will teach us to be correct, and we'll gain experience. But you need to own your fucking opinions, and they matter. And we're here in a team because, everybody's input is important here. And whatever, it sounds like I'm blaming Luke. I'm not blaming Luke. I'm commending him because he's the only one that had the foresight to even think, okay, this thing can actually come back and literally put us back. I can't remember the words he said, but I think he said something that we can get back and go back into the point of control from the previous value area. You're down here in the 800s, 900s, that area, right? Which is exactly what it did. So, and we weren't prepared for that. We didn't know the levels, and that's an issue because when we took out the, I knew that there was going to be some momentum if we took out the 300s, and we did get some momentum. But then here we got this chop, but and this was all a waste, such a fucking waste of mental energy, like mental capital and effort and time and everything. This time could have been spent, okay, doing this. Okay, let's zoom out and see where the fuck are we on the chart? Where is the next value area? Where is this thing going? What can happen next? And instead of doing that, we were just there complaining and whining the whole time about how we didn't like the price action. And, that's not okay. This area where I was saying that it should have bounced. This area was basically the launching pad. This was 125 150, which is basically the launching pad from yesterday when we went, when it did that parabolic move to the upside. It was basically the breakout. It was basically where it created the structure at the top of the 7 or 8 day range where the highs were in the 25 130s or something like that, and this is where it took out that area and it trapped here. It created a structure for the breakout. So this level was important. Clearly it was important. It was a level. It was a meaningful level. I don't know how important it was. Now I realize how important it was. I'm not sure that we would have imagined how important it was or not, but we had to know that it was a meaningful level at least, and we had to identify then sort of like observe that we were finding sort of like a bottom of that level and it was chopping there. And that there's something was going to happen there, a resolution where it was either going to bounce or it was going to keep going lower. And the thing is, I was forcing here the bounce, but at the same time, it's like, um, the other thing that Luca pointed out after the session over text, and he's absolutely right, is that this resembles a lot what happened on Monday. It's all about patterns, pattern recognition here. And it's exactly what happened on Monday. And on Monday, we had. Shit doesn't go back till Monday on the 1 minute. Okay. That was a 5 second. The 1 minute. On Monday, um, was it on Monday? Dude, I can't even remember. No, I don't think it was on Monday. Maybe it was on Tuesday. It wasn't on Monday. It may have been on Friday. Gee, I can't even remember. Okay, it wasn't Monday. Well, I mean, could it have been Wednesday? No, because Wednesday was the beginning of the move upwards. No, Thursday was the beginning of the move upwards. So would have been, um, dude, do I need to stop this fucking thing to record it again? It was here. Oh, Monday. Monday. Okay, fuck this shit. Okay, so yeah, they did the same thing on Monday, where I can't go to the 5 seconds, so we can't really see but it was very similar price action. Like we um we got this momentum here into the 900s. We had the 24,800 as an important level that we knew we were going to get momentum if we break below that. But we also thought we were going to get momentum on the break of the 900s and the break of this structure here. And instead of getting that, we got the same type of price action. Sketchy, choppy, trappy trend, lower but controlled and just hell. But it almost looks like, they're walking it down that way, and then when it breaks below that key level, bam, then we get real momentum. In this case, we were expecting real momentum below 24,800, and that's different from today, where we weren't really aware of what the key levels were. So here we got momentum on the break of 300, which was that we were expecting that, but then this thing is very similar to what happened there. It's sketchy, choppy action, and they're bringing it down into it seems this level at 150, and then finally it's that one level that's very important where everything is so stretched that below that level, bam, then we get real momentum. And that's what happened today. It's it's a very similar pattern, and it's not this is not just the second time. I've seen this many times before, and I know this because when this happened on Monday, I was thinking about this, but I forgot to mention it during a meeting, or I think we haven't had a meeting actually since Monday to address these things. And it crossed my head, but I didn't. I think I wrote it down in my journal, but I didn't make it. I should have had a little bit more of a sense of urgency to really touch on that, because I've seen that pattern before, where we get choppy until it comes to a level where below that level, then we get that momentum. It's almost like they bring it down to that level until then everybody capitulates there. Here they're forcing it down to the point where everybody will capitulate. And the same thing happened on Monday. And the thing is that we need to know what the important levels are. And we didn't. We were just lost there in the noise and complaining. And if we have a better idea of where we are on the chart and we know that the next important area is going to be the 150s, then we don't waste time here getting involved and getting chopped up and getting stressed out. We just wait for that important level to see how it behaves against it before making a decision, before putting capital at risk, before putting mental capital at risk, all that stuff. That would have been enough. Maybe to wait for here. Obviously, we would have been thinking, okay, we're going to try to play for a bounce here, but we would have, at least I speak for myself here, I would have been a lot more calm, better able to assess the action. You know, it was very clear from the tape that this was, I was trying to force a bounce, but every time it wasn't. Well, the same theme from up here. It was staying heavy. It was staying heavy. It would not pop. It would not pop. It would not go. It would not go. And that means something. That means that it's just not going. It means maybe it's trapping, which is exactly what it was doing. And we would have been better able to realize that there, and then we would have been prepared to flip to momentum when everybody starts capitulating. So it was a big fail not to know all the levels, not to understand that this thing was being forced down into an area, and that in this case we were already very stretched. It could be a level where people would capitulate. Not being, not being aware, having it very clear that we have another value area that we're moving into, which is exactly where we're coming from. Which is this value area here where we were, right? The 9 at the beginning, the 24,800 is the floor of that. So this area, we're basically filling the whole two-day gap here. That's what we were doing here. So knowing that that's a possibility and being prepared for that, having, and once we get the break of this level and when we're getting real capitulation, also having an idea of, we know that the 900s is going to be a potential target area, because that's what it makes sense. We weren't prepared for any of these scenarios. And if we don't have them in our head, then we're there just like lost in the noise. So that's a big fail. That is a very big fail. The other big fail, well, this is not a big fail, but these are little things that I think it's important that we're not doing the work correctly, and we need to put in the work during the meeting so everybody's on the same page. Like, we've talked about this, but maybe we haven't talked about this enough, and we have to. In the style that we're trading, when we are, we're always, we divide things into a range where we're in mean reversion mode, and then we break out of that range and we're getting momentum, and then we flip to momentum, and that's where we get these moves, right? We've talked about, and this is something that we're sort of incorporating now, where when we're in these momentum moves, that we should be using the 9 EMA on the 1 minute to help us. And today was a huge help because this was not easy, right? But this pop into this area, and then this pop into this area, we were able to sort of like, trade it because of that 9 EMA that was guiding there. So, okay, cool. But there's, in momentum, there are certain rules, man, that they're just, they're simple to follow, and everybody needs to understand them. When we're in a momentum move, whether it's on the way down or the way up, all these like little levels, technical levels, whether it's single prints or ATRs or all that crap, none of that crap matters, man. None of that crap matters, and it only distracts. It distracts, and it makes things more difficult to then start focusing on these little levels in the middle of nowhere. Nobody gives a shit about that. We're in the middle of when we're capitulating. We're in the middle of a momentum move. Those levels do not matter anymore. And all that matters is the major levels on the volume profile where the value areas are, or the that we should have identified earlier, and that are important on a volume profile, and the whole numbers and the half numbers, the whole numbers and the half numbers. And that's all that matters. And if you see it on the ladder, it's always like that. 20 cents above and above the whole number, or not even. If it's on the way down, it's like 10 cents, 10 to 15 cents above the whole number, 20 cents below the number. If it's in this case, if it's like 300, then 280s. And I remember saying I'm going to give it until 280s, and it bounced from 280s, and I took this bounce. But then when it takes out the 280s, then it's momentum, and then the next one is 250, and then that 250 is super important. And if it exhausts in the 250s, then it's going to bounce. If it drifts below 250 and then exhausts below in the low 240s, then it's momentum to the downside. We're not fading it. And and we're waiting for a pop into the 250s for further momentum to the downside. Okay, and then we don't fade it until it gets down into the lows. That's just how momentum works, at least in these quick and low time frame scalping thing. That's how it works. And yeah, I think Lot was like, here it was like he was like, oh, but there's at a 260 there's like, no man, no. Or and you're also saying at some point here you're like, I'm going to put on a core here because you thought it was going to bounce somewhere around here. It's creating confusion, because at this point it's like when I switch to momentum, it's like, this is it. There's no time for ambiguities, and it's about capturing that momentum move until it exhausts. And I'm focused not even on the chart anymore. I'm just razor focused on the tape. So that stuff is not helpful during those moments. Um, and again, what matters really is those levels that are, very, that are on the profile line. It's all about volume profile, really. Other things, yeah, sure, if they help sometimes when they overlap with, that's fine. But when things aren't, when we're selling off and there's like it's a momentum move, it's like that's what gives us the information that we need, and everything else aside from that sort of creates confusion. Um, I don't know what else to say. Okay. The other thing is, okay, during market prep, there were very um, important fundamental things in the news cycle and the narrative overnight. I tweeted a bunch of them overnight before. I mean, I woke up at fucking 3 a.m. to tweet about these things, to text about them because they were important. And we didn't touch on any of these, not one of these things during the pre-market prep. And we could have been better prepared for this sell-off scenario just by talking about them, because all those things are well aligned with a sell-off. And so that's important, man. And it's like everybody on their own. I'm not asking you guys to be doom scrolling all day. It's not good for everyone. I try not to do it, but I find myself doing it a lot. But the point is that we do need to be, if we're traders, we need to be in the loop, and we need to be knowing exactly, just be there in the news cycle, understand what things matter, what things don't matter, you know, what's going on, with AI, what's going on with Anthropic, what's going on with the Nvidia, um, um, earnings? What are people saying? Why did market react the way it did? What can that mean? What can come next if the market didn't react strongly to the upside after stellar earnings? What is it about those earnings that people are not? What are people saying? Very similar to to what happened last time. Creative, you know, uh, creative accounting and books you know, like circular financing and that the whole little vicious circle between OpenAI and Nvidia and CoreWeave, and I mean that those things matter, man. And the whole DeepSeek thing that also came out coincidentally, most likely on purpose. They do it that way. They're announcing that they're not gonna, that they're gonna launch without the Western tech companies, and maybe they're gonna launch with Huawei or something like that next week. That also has an impact on the market. All these things added up. That's what creates this shit. The options. I sent out another tweet where they talk about that, where a guy is saying, also likely he's right in some way, that this was all mechanical sell-off because these were all because of all these negative things added up, and there were a bunch of and some dealers sold, I don't know how many, short-term call options for Nvidia to be above 200, and then Nvidia, when it starts selling off, which it did, and it couldn't hold that 200 level. Let's see what it did today. Wow, look at that. It couldn't hold 200 level. Then they had to start selling. They had to start selling stock in order to hedge against the options that they sold, and that was okay. That's part of what created the whole thing, the sell-off. So it's sort of like a mechanical. All these things, we have to know them. We have to know that the people are talking about it. We have to know that they're part of the narrative for the day. We have to have an understanding of what it could mean for the market. We're not going to make decisions just based on that, but we kind of have to be in the know. We have to be in the know. It's just that it's our job as traders. And if any of us is a little bit behind, or maybe a little bit, not quite understanding, well, there's fucking AI to get up to date and up to speed with these things. But it's our job to be up to speed with these things and to know what's part of the narrative for the day. And these things need to be a part of our pre-market prep. It's not even acceptable that we don't even say anything about that we don't even discuss that. I've been sending tweets all night, so it's there in the feed. We all should be looking at it, and it should spark some sort of conversation, at least, or at least acknowledgement that, okay, well, this could be a thing. What do we think? We have to, right? It's not okay that we didn't do that. Any group or pod, or in a firm or not in a firm, whatever, people are getting together doing pre-market prep before the day to make decisions or whatnot, that these things are always part of the conversation. How do we not touch on that? So that was the other major fail. So man, this video is going to be really long. I'm sorry, but I do want, let's just go over the okay, there I am, loud as always. Let's go to, maybe we can even skip the open and just go straight to what I think is more value. Is I'll just walk you through how I would have traded the sell-off, the capitulation here, if I had not capitulated myself. So here I was basically fading off of the bottom here on these dips into the 140s and 150s, and it just wouldn't bounce. Here I did it again. I was also on tilt because, you guys, I don't have, have to explain or anything. But part of the reason why I was on tilt is because it looks like I may have hit a hotkey, or the system may have done it by itself, and I wouldn't be surprised that it did. And it put my size. I had my size at one micro, and it put my size at 10 micros. So I was literally, you know, 10x size without knowing. And this is the thing that pushed me over the edge right at the worst moment, right here. And that's where I lost it. I lost it there, and bam, that's where it flushes. And I'm only down $240. I could have stopped my loss there and flipped, but I was so consumed and so that little detail, literally at that exact moment, pushed me over the edge, and I was like, "Fuck it." I was livid, and that's what made me, you know, yeah, it's so stupid, man. Okay, and bam, and then it keeps going, and that's where I blow up. I had plenty of time to get out and flip, anyways. But the point is that let's go over that really quick again. So maybe a little bit further ahead. Huh. Done. Okay, so all right, so here again, the low here is in the 130s, but it was really 140s, 150s the area. It was supposed to be bouncing. It's not bouncing. I'm waiting for it to bounce. It doesn't bounce, and then all of a sudden, it just gives out. Bam. Okay, 130s. It it dips below 130. We see a you know sharp burst of speed there, but it's not exhaustion. It could have been exhaustion. It could have been a quick bounce, like a wick, and then but it didn't. It stayed heavy. It didn't go. It didn't keep printing, and and now it's pushing the lows again. That's enough. That's enough. That's all you need to see to immediately flip short, full size, and then you see how it stays heavy, and that's what we're looking at. We have to like watch how it stays. And here we're getting a lot of printing, a lot of um, block orders and speed, but the keeps pushing down. This would have been considered on any normal situation. This would have been exhaustion and something to just fade and go back up. But in this case, it's not bouncing one bit and it keeps pushing down. This is true capitulation. Here, it hesitates a little bit. Maybe it's going to pop a little bit higher. But it's already clear that this thing is just getting started, especially because all the time that it spent here trapping, that this thing has way more to go. And at this point, look at the tape. Obviously, we're getting a lot of speed and a lot of prints, but that's the new normal. So in any normal situation, this would be considered like exhaustion, but now this is the new normal, this sort of speed. And here's what I was mentioning again. So now here we switch over to we divide things in whole number, 20 cents below whole number, half number. So in this case, 25 100. We're going to pay attention to the 80s. It gets below the 80s, we're going to pay attention to 2550. And we divide the whole ladder in these in segments. Right now, it's like drifting upwards. If it can't really reclaim the 100s, or maybe it does, but it stays really there in the low 100s, and then and it stays heavy, that puts us in this section below 100. 100 has been taken out, so it's still a short. It would be a long if we had seen outsized, really strong exhaustion here in the 80s. We see that 87.25 was the low. If we had seen a ton of printing there and strong exhaustion there, and then it quickly bounces back up, we wouldn't be shorting there. That would be the bottom, an overshoot for the whole number area, and we would expect to bounce back into this area. But we didn't get that exhaustion, even though it shows up here as a pretty strong volume candle. It didn't feel that different from the exhaustion up higher up in relative value, in relative terms. It just felt like the new normal. So, and see how it stays heavy and it can't reclaim the 100. Maybe it does pop up a little bit, but look how it stays heavy. So it's still a short. So you have to be adding here. You have to be adding up in this area because it's going to come back down. And again, if we see a double bottom, if we see exhaustion in the 80s, but we're not seeing it. Look, now it's just drifting into this area. The tape is steady. The ladder is probably going to go up and down a little bit. Look at all the orders there piled up, waiting for it to come back up because everybody's shorting it up in the area because they know that this thing is a short still. So far, and then bam, keeps pushing down. We see increased speed, but that's not capitulation at all. Capitulation would be like a super strong burst of speed. We haven't seen that yet. And we need to see price capitulation as well. So in this case, we don't take this off until we see real capitulation. We would expect that we may get real capitulation in the 50 area now, because now that's the next section. We're getting speed there, so we're cautious, but it keeps pushing down. This could count, but it's still not, and it's still pushing down. We're getting close to 250, so we're ready maybe for a bounce off of the 2050, 2550. We're getting a little bit of speed there, and that worries us a little bit, but no big deal. It's now in the 60s. We're getting more acceleration. Bam! That is true capitulation. That was price capitulation, 20 cents in just a second, and a real speed, burst of speed. That's capitulation. So that could be a bounce. But what happens here? It dipped below 50. And it keeps pushing lower, and it's not bouncing even with that extreme capitulation. Now we're in the next section because now we are below the 50 level. We divide the ladder in sections again, in two halves, and within those halves, 20 cents below the whole number, 10, 15 cents above the whole number. So in this case, if we exhaust it, but it didn't stay above the 50s and it kept pushing lower into the 40s, and that printing stopped or kept steady and it's not bouncing, that's it. We could have been, if we had gone capitulation and bounce, we would be fading here off of that exhaustion. In this case, if we did try to fade and we got caught, we get out immediately and we flip momentum because this is a short again, and now we're in the next section, the next leg down. It's pushing back a little bit. That's normal, but we're below 50. We're in the next leg. So it's still a short. Now, let's wait until we don't consider getting out until next exhaustion. And next exhaustion is going to be when? It's going to be the whole number. And it's not just any whole number. It's going to be 25,000. Pretty meaningful. So, but we're still not getting out until we see the exhaustion on the tape. The ladder's doing, going up and down, but the tape is steady. And these drifts up are just opportunities for us to get back in, as long as it stays below 2050. It can even pop up all the way into that area, and I'm still going to be adding to that short if it pops up into the 2050s, because that's sort of like the line in the sand. That's the what limits this section from the section above. Didn't even get there. And now we're getting very close to the low, 25,000, which is where, and you see how, okay, tape accelerating, but it's not capitulation because that's the new normal right now. And we're not getting capitulation until we get to the very, very low 25,000s. And we still haven't gotten it. Ton of block orders there. We're now in the 90s, which is still considered part of the whole number area. In this case, we would be getting out just because. But the real exhaustion, I don't think we've seen it yet. I can't remember. I would say that this is it. Here. No block orders, but look at the speed. Snappy. It's snappy. It's kind of like snappy burst of speed. Bam. And then, okay, somebody's texting. You see, and now it's bouncing. So um, that's it, because that was a whole number. Again, I can't move the charts here because I wasn't there, but um, I would be on the 1 minute. I would be looking at where is the 90 MA, because this thing is drifting up of the whole number. 90s is still considered, remember we said 20 cents below the whole number is still considered that whole number area. So this could be a bounce territory, but it's still feeling heavy. And now look, it wants to take out the lows. So we're paying attention. The tape is snappy here. When the tape is snappy, it could be, this could be bottom. They're defending it. But, well, let's see if it blows through, because it's still heavy. Bam, bam, capitulation into the 80s. We went below the 80s, which is 20 cents below the whole number. We're now in the 70s, so this thing is going to keep going down. It is a short. See? And we're going to, and this thing doesn't exhaust until maybe, I think it sort of like exhausts here in this area. It drifts back up and then back down and whatever. We're not going to play the whole thing, but, and I think I put an order there on the practice account, and I blew up that one too. Because when I got back to the desk, that's what was happening. And I was like, oh, let me try here, whatever. Point is, that we're in the middle of a capitulation, like a middle of a sell-off, a liquidation like that. Those levels that you have on your chart that came about by technical, whatever, however you came up with, those things don't matter anymore. The only things that matter are the major areas or levels that we know are important by value areas on the volume profile, or very important levels that we know are important because we knew they were in play when we were trading it. And whole numbers and half numbers. And that's it. Anything else is distracting and not productive. Anyways, that's how the tape was looking on that one. Over the weekend, we can look at the tape on the one at the open. That was actually pretty good. But this video is already too long.